Mr. Agassi, you're working in Israel. They seem to be planning for the worst in Israel, that is planning for a world in which oil is used as a weapon against Israel and against the rest of the world. So what is their response in terms of planning going forward into the future?
Well, the assumption in Israel is that given the right infrastructure, given the right pricing, the consumer will actually make the choice to go with no oil. And so I think they're planning for the best in that sense, that all of us, given the opportunity to disconnect from oil and connect to electricity, we will choose to do the right thing. I think the American consumer will do the same.
Yeah, well, that's not an assumption, however, that it has been made inside the Bush administration. They don't plan for the worst, but they also, taking your comment in quotes, they also don't plan for the best. They don't plan for the American people to respond to the challenge in the same way that President Kennedy expected the American people to respond to the challenge to the Soviets in outer space with this nuclear capacity attached to it. So I think that's still a real problem in our country. So you heard what Mr. Holmes said about the amount of wind that would have to be generated in order to provide for all of the electricity for the vehicles in his country. And by the way, last year in the United States, we actually installed 5,400 new megawatts of wind in the United States. Now, what would 5,400 megawatts of wind mean in your country, Mr. Holm, in terms of your automotive industry?
A matter of simple math.
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
We 4,500 megawatts. That's 3 times the amount I mentioned. So it's 6 million cars.
6 million cars.
Yeah.
Could be powered.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
provided that you have the same wind pattern here as we have in my country.
okay. Well, we're going to assume that we will accept the challenge, and we will at least be able to match your country in terms of the efficiency of our wind system. Mr. Agassi, can you extrapolate that for the United States of America? What would you think might be possible here in our country, looking at what Mr. Holm is talking about, looking about what the Israelis are planning? What could happen in the United States if your vision took hold?
So I think if you looked at the U.S., roughly at a cost of any source, the average source, wind, solar, wave, of about $2,500 per car, we would be able to install capacity that would drive that car for the next 50 years without a single molecule of CO2 coming into the atmosphere and without a single drop of oil coming into our system. In effect, if you took the U.S. and you put 200 gigawatt of generation in any source, any mix, over the next, let's say, 10 years, 200 gigawatt being 200,000 megawatts, we would get every car in the U.S. going forever. And we could do that at a cost of about $500 billion spread over the next 10 years, of which 80% is labor that stays in America. So we can replace oil imports with jobs at a scope of about 1 year of oil imports. We could get off oil.
Now, right now, President Bush is threatening a veto of a bill that would extend the wind and solar and other renewable tax breaks that generate electricity in our country, hopefully in the years ahead. And at the same time, I hate to say this, but it's the Republicans in the Senate that blocked our passage just by one vote of legislation that would have established a minimal goal for new renewable electricity generation by 2020 in our country. Could you comment upon that, Mr. Agassi, in terms of long-term planning and where we should be going in terms of non-polluting electricity being used by non-polluting automobiles that the American people could rely upon?
I think one of the critical issues that people have to remember is that putting cars on the grid, putting cars on the road that have batteries in them, creates a different economic model for renewable generation. Cars park 22 hours in a day. They drive 2 hours in a day. When they're parked, the battery is available to absorb electricity that comes from renewable sources. And so if you have a lot of cars, if you have 200 million batteries parked most of the day, you can take a lot of electricity that comes from renewable sources, especially wind. Wind is a great example because wind blows mostly at night. And so the perfect appliance that matches to wind generation is a car, because a park is parked mostly at night. You put the two together, and you actually replace oil with wind. That's the only way to replace oil with wind. We talk a lot about taking oil out of the equation, putting renewable sources. If we don't put the wire, the electric wire that connects the two, we won't be able to get there.